The last bus to Hollow Creek before you. Listen to this story. Imagine standing alone at a bus stop after midnight. The street is empty. The lights above you keep flickering. Your phone has no signal. And then, from the darkness at the end of the road, you see headlights coming closer. A bus stops in front of you. The doors open, but there is no driver. If you enjoy scary stories like this, please take a second to like this video. Subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below. Your support helps this channel bring you more chilling stories every night. And if you are brave enough to listen until the end, leave a comment saying, "I saw the last bus." Now, turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and listen carefully. Because this story begins with a bus route that no longer exists, and a town that should not appear on any map. Mason Clark missed the last train out of Portland on a rainy Friday night. It was not the kind of mistake he usually made. Mason was careful with time, careful with money, careful with everything, because after losing his job and ending a long relationship in the same month, he had become the kind of man who believed one more mistake might finally break him. He had been visiting his mother in the hospital. She lived 2 hours outside the city, and Mason had planned to catch the 11:40 train home, but the doctor arrived late. His mother cried when he tried to leave. Then his phone battery died while he was checking the schedule. By the time Mason reached the station, the platform was empty. The last train was gone. Rain fell in silver lines beneath the station lights. Mason stood there with his jacket soaked through, staring at the dark tracks. "Perfect," he whispered. There was a small bus terminal beside the train station. Most of the counters were closed, but one old schedule board still glowed weakly near the entrance. Mason walked over, hoping for a night bus, a shuttle, anything that would take him close to home. The board showed one route still running. Route 19 Hollow Creek departure, 12:17 a.m. Mason frowned. He had never heard of Hollow Creek, but beneath the route name, smaller text read, "Stops near East Junction. Connection to Portland Line." East Junction was close enough. From there, he could call a cab in the morning. Mason checked the time on the wall clock. 12:09 a.m. He went to the ticket window. But no one was there. The glass was dusty. A metal speaker sat beneath it, dark and silent. On the counter was a stack of old paper tickets. One ticket lay separate from the rest. Mason picked it up. One-way Hollow Creek. The paper was yellow with age. On the back, written in faded ink, were 3 words, "Do not sleep." Mason stared at it. Then he laughed nervously. Someone was playing a joke. He slipped the ticket into his pocket anyway and walked outside to the bus stop. The rain had become heavier. The street beyond the station was almost completely empty. A few closed shops lined the road. Their windows reflected the wet pavement and the flickering streetlights. Somewhere far away, a siren wailed and faded. At exactly 12:17 a.m., headlights appeared. At the end of the street, a bus rolled toward him through the rain. It was old, much older than any bus Mason had seen in years. Its paint was faded green and white. The windows were dark. The destination sign above the windshield flickered weakly. Hollow Creek. The bus stopped in front of him with a long hiss of brakes. The doors folded open. Mason looked inside. The driver's seat was empty. He waited. No one spoke. The inside lights buzzed overhead. "Hello," Mason called. No answer. He should have walked away. He knew that later. He should have gone back inside the station, waited until morning, and forgotten the strange ticket in his pocket. But rain was pouring down his face. He was exhausted. His mother's crying voice still echoed in his head. And the bus, impossible as it seemed, was warm inside. So Mason stepped on. The doors closed. behind him. The moment they did, the bus began moving. Mason grabbed a pole to keep from falling. "Hey," he shouted. "Wait," but the driver's seat remained empty. "The steering will turn by itself." The bus pulled away from the station and drove into the rain. There were passengers on board. Mason had not noticed them at first. Because they were all sitting still. Too still. An elderly woman sat near the front, holding a brown purse on her lap. A man in a dark suit sat 3 rows behind her, staring out the window. A teenage boy in a Letterman jacket sat near the back with his head bowed. A mother held a sleeping baby wrapped in a blue blanket. No one looked at Mason. No one reacted to the empty driver's seat. Mason moved slowly down the aisle. "Is this bus going to East Junction?" he asked. No one answered. He sat halfway down, near the middle doors, and pulled out his dead phone. Still dead. Of course. Outside, the city lights thinned. The bus drove through streets Mason did not recognize. Buildings became warehouses. Warehouses became empty lots. Empty lots became dark trees pressing close to the road. Mason leaned toward the window. There should not have been trees this close to the station. They had been driving for only 10 minutes. The elderly woman at the front spoke. Without turning around. "First time," Mason looked up. "What, first time on the last bus?" she said. Her voice was dry and soft. Mason forced a smile. "I guess so." The woman nodded. "Then remember the rules." Mason's stomach tightened. "What rules?" The man in the dark suit answered from behind her. "Do not speak to the driver." Mason looked toward the empty driver's seat. There is no driver. The teenage boy at the back lifted his head. His face was pale. There is when he wants there to be. The bus lights flickered. For 1 second, Mason saw someone sitting behind the wheel. A tall figure in a black coat. Then the light steadied. The seat was empty again. Mason stood up. "I need to get off." The elderly woman shook her head. "Not until your stop." "What stop?" She finally turned to look at him. Her eyes were cloudy and gray. "The one printed on your ticket." Mason pulled the paper ticket from his pocket. The words had changed. It no longer said Hollow Creek. Now it said, "Passenger, Mason Clark stop." End of the line. Mason's hands went cold. "I did not ask for this." The woman looked away. "No one does." The bus kept moving. Rain lashed against the windows. The road outside narrowed until it became a 2-lane highway surrounded by black forest. There were no signs, no houses, no headlights from other cars, only the bus, the rain, and the pale reflection of passengers in the glass. Mason noticed something wrong with those reflections. They did not match the passengers. The elderly woman's reflection was younger. Her face was bruised. Blood ran down one side of her forehead. The man in the suit's reflection had a rope mark around his neck. The teenage boy's reflection was soaked and covered in mud. The mother's reflection was empty-handed. There was no baby in the glass. Mason turned away, breathing hard. The man in the suit spoke quietly. "Do not look too long." Mason swallowed. "What is this?" The man's eyes stayed on the window. "A route. To where?" The man smiled faintly. "Wherever it took us." The bus slowed. A bell rang once. Ding. The elderly woman stood. Her brown purse trembled in her hands. The bus stopped beside a dark field. There was no bus stop sign. Only an old wooden fence and a mailbox. Leaning in the mud. The doors opened. Cold air rushed inside. The elderly woman walked toward the exit. Before stepping off, she looked back at Mason. "If someone you love gets on," she whispered, "do not follow them." Then she stepped into the rain. The doors closed. The bus moved on. Mason watched through the window as the woman walked toward the field. Lightning flashed. For 1 second, he saw a wrecked car wrapped around a tree. The woman stood beside it. Young again. screaming. Then darkness returned. Mason pressed himself back into the seat. "What was that?" he whispered. The teenage boy answered, "Her stop." After that, Mason stopped asking questions. The bus drove deeper into the forest. At 12:47 a.m., the man in the suit got off beside an abandoned church. At 1:03 a.m., the teenage boy got off near a flooded bridge. At 1:22 a.m., the mother with the baby stood and walked toward the door. As she passed Mason, he saw the blanket in her arms move. But when the bus lights flickered, the blanket was empty. The mother looked down at it and began to cry. The doors opened. Outside was a hospital. Entrance, old, dark, covered in vines. The mother stepped off. The baby began crying from somewhere outside the bus. But not from her arms. From inside the hospital. The mother ran toward the sound. The doors closed. The bus continued. Now Mason was alone. Almost. At the very back of the bus, someone sat. In the last row. Mason was sure the seat had been empty before. The figure wore a black coat and a wide-brimmed hat. Its head was lowered. Its hands rested on its knees. Long fingers. Too long. Mason looked away. The bus radio crackled. A voice came through the speaker above the windshield. "Next stop, Hollow Creek." Mason stood and moved toward the front. "Open the doors," he shouted. "I want to get off now." The steering wheel turned by itself. The bus did not slow. Behind him, the figure in the black coat spoke. "You already paid." Its voice was deep, wet, like someone speaking through water. Mason turned slowly. The figure lifted its head. There was no face beneath the hat. Only darkness. And in that darkness, two pale lights opened like eyes. Mason stumbled backward. "What are you?" The figure smiled without a mouth. "The driver." The bus entered Hollow Creek. At 1:33 a.m. At least, that was what the sign said. The town appeared suddenly, as if the forest had opened around it. Old buildings lined a narrow main street. A gas station with broken pumps. A diner with lights still on. A movie theater with torn posters. A church with its doors wide open. Everything looked abandoned. But people stood in the windows. Dozens of them. Watching the bus pass. Their faces were gray. Their eyes followed Mason. The bus slowed in front of the diner. Inside, people sat at tables with plates of untouched food. A waitress stood behind the counter, smiling at the bus. Her smile was too wide. The radio crackled. Again. "Welcome to Hollow Creek." Mason looked through the windshield. At the end of Main Street stood another bus stop. Under its flickering light stood a woman. Mason's heart stopped. His mother. She wore the same blue cardigan she had been wearing in the hospital that night. Her hair was thin. Her face was tired. She looked cold and afraid. She lifted one hand. Mason ran to the front of the bus. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no." The bus stopped. The doors opened. His mother stood outside. In the rain. "Mason," she said. "Please help me." Mason stepped toward the door. Then he remembered the elderly woman's warning. "If someone you love gets on, do not follow them." He froze. His mother began to cry. "Mason, they left me here." His throat tightened. "You are not her." Her face changed. Not much. Just enough. Her smile became stiff. Her eyes became darker. "Mason," she said. Again. This time, her voice was lower. "Be a good son." The driver spoke from behind him. "She has been waiting." Mason backed away from the doors. The thing wearing his mother's face stopped crying. It stared at him. Then it whispered, "Your real mother will be here soon." The doors slammed shut. The bus lurched forward. Mason fell to the floor. Outside, the thing that looked like his mother stood beneath the bus stop light, smiling as the bus drove away. Mason crawled to his feet. The driver was no longer at the back. It was behind the wheel now. Tall, faceless, hands on the steering. Wheel. The bus moved slowly through Hollow Creek. Every building they passed seemed to lean toward the road. The windows were full of faces. Some looked human. Others did not. Mason searched for a way out. Emergency hatch. Side door. Window latch. Nothing opened. Then he saw the ticket machine beside the driver. A metal box with a narrow slot. Inside the clear plastic window, dozens of paper tickets were stacked together. Names. Hundreds of names. Mason saw his own ticket near the top. He remembered what the old woman had said. Not until your stop. Maybe the ticket was the lock. He moved quietly toward the machine. The driver did not turn. Mason reached for the tickets. The driver's hand shot out and grabbed his wrist. Its fingers were freezing. You cannot take what you gave. Mason screamed and pulled back. The driver's fingers tightened. In the window beside him, Mason saw his reflection, but it was not him as he was now. It was him older, pale, dead-eyed, sitting on the bus, waiting for someone else to board. Mason grabbed the emergency hammer from beside the door and smashed it into the ticket machine. Glass shattered. The driver shrieked. The bus swerved. Mason grabbed his ticket from the pile. The moment his fingers touched it, all the passengers appeared again. The elderly woman. The man in the suit. The teenage boy. The mother. Dozens more. All standing in the aisle. All staring at him. The driver rose from the seat. The bus drove itself. Mason tore his ticket in half. The lights went out. The passengers screamed. The bus windows shattered inward. Rain and darkness rushed inside. The driver lunged. Mason jumped toward the open door as the bus tipped sideways. For 1 second, he saw Hollow Creek stretch around him like a mouth. Then everything went black. Mason woke on the floor of the bus terminal. Morning light came through the windows. A janitor was shaking his shoulder. "Hey," the janitor said. "You okay, Mason?" Sat up, gasping. His clothes were dry. His phone was charged. The terminal was busy with morning commuters. Outside, buses came and went normally. No rain. No storm. No Hollow Creek. Mason stood and ran to the schedule board. There was no Route 19. No Hollow Creek. He asked the ticket clerk about it. The woman frowned. "Hollow Creek, yes. Route 19. She shook her head. "There has not been a Route 19 in years." Mason felt dizzy. "What happened to it?" The clerk hesitated. Then she said, "There was an accident. Long time ago. Bus went off a bridge. During a storm. They said the driver fell asleep. Everyone on board died." Mason looked down at his hand. He was still holding half of the ticket. The torn half. The paper was wet. On it, the printed destination had changed. Again. It now read, "Return trip pending Mason. Went straight to the hospital." His mother was asleep when he arrived. Alive. Breathing. Safe. He sat beside her bed and cried quietly. For 3 days, nothing happened. Then, on the 4th night, his mother woke. Suddenly at 12:17 a.m. She looked toward the dark window. "Mason," she whispered. He sat up. "What is it?" She pointed outside. At the hospital entrance below, a bus had stopped by the curb. Old. Green and white. Its headlights glowed in the rain. The doors were open. Mason looked at the street. There was no driver. His mother began to cry. "I think it is here for me." Mason grabbed her hand. "No." The bus horn sounded once. Low. Long. Waiting. From the speaker system in the hospital hallway, a voice crackled through static. "Route 19. Now boarding." Mason ran to the hallway and shouted for nurses. But no one heard it. No one saw the bus. Only him. Only his mother. When he returned to the room, his mother was standing by the window. Her hospital gown moved in a wind that was not there. She looked back at him with tears in her eyes. "I am tired, Mason." He shook his head. "Please do not." Outside, the bus lights flickered. Inside the room, the torn half of Mason's Ticket appeared on the floor. The missing half was now beside it. Whole again. The destination read, 2. Passengers. Mason picked it up. The paper burned cold in his hand. His mother whispered, maybe we can ride together. Behind him. The hospital door opened. The driver stood in the hallway. Faceless. Hat dripping rainwater onto the clean floor. Mason did not think. He grabbed the ticket. And ran. The driver followed. Slowly at first, then faster. Mason ran down the stairs. Through the lobby, and out into the rain. The bus waited at the curb, doors open. Engine rumbling. He could hear passengers inside. Whispering. Calling his name. Calling his mother's name. Mason looked back. The driver was behind him. At the hospital window above, his mother watched. Mason stepped onto the bus. The doors closed. The driver stopped. Outside, head tilted, Mason held up the ticket. Only one passenger, he whispered. Then he tore the ticket again. This time, he tore it into as many pieces as he could. The bus screamed. Not the brakes, not the engine. The bus itself. Seats split open. Windows cracked. Hands reached from beneath the floor. The driver slammed both hands against the glass from outside. The doors tried to open. Mason kept tearing piece after piece. Until the ticket was nothing but wet paper dust in his palms. The bus lights exploded. The world turned white. When Mason woke, he was in the hospital parking lot. The bus was gone. The storm was gone. His mother's room light was still on above him. He ran inside. She was asleep, alive. The doctor said her condition had stabilized during the night. Mason did not tell anyone what happened. Who would believe him? A ghost bus. A dead route. A town full of waiting passengers. But after that night, his mother slowly recovered. Weeks passed. Then months. Mason moved closer to her and stopped taking late trains. He avoided bus terminals. He never stood near a bus stop after midnight. He threw away every paper ticket he had ever kept. But sometimes, when rain falls hard against the windows, he hears a sound from far away. A bus horn. Low. Long. Waiting. And sometimes, when he checks his mailbox, he finds a wet paper ticket inside. No stamp. No envelope. Just a ticket. One-way Hollow Creek on the back. Written in faded ink, are the same 3 words. Do not sleep. If you ever miss the last train at night, be careful what bus you take. Check the route. Check the driver. Check the passengers. And if the ticket says Hollow Creek, do not get on, because some buses do not take you where you want to go. They take you where you were meant to disappear. If this story gave you chills, leave a comment saying, I saw the last bus. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications, because the next story may begin with headlights in the rain and a bus door opening when no one is behind the wheel.